And we are back with Matt and Anthony from ProSportsFix.com. And just picking up on the conversation where we left off, if for those just tuning in, kind of refresh us a little bit of what we were doing.
We were just discussing WCW and the Cruiserweight division, and we actually got off on a side note talking about how horrible they used Billy Kidman in the Hulk Hogan angle. So that's where we were at.
Oh, yeah. I think he said something about Kidman couldn't draw flies at a flea market or something.
That was the line.
Yeah, that was the line. Yeah. And then I remember they paired him with Eric Bischoff, and I thought, well, Bischoff is standing over because he's taller than him. I was like, man, that's just the way to go, right?
And as we're learning, Hogan's not exactly the master at drawing fans either. I mean, if we were, then TNA would be a far more viable promotion.
Today's day and age, sure.
Yeah, what do you think? Well, while we're talking about TNA, what are your thoughts of all these current releases?
Matt, thank you. I think this is simply indicative as to where this company's heading. I mean, they've been going week to week for 10 years now. I mean, they started off as that pay-per-view company in Nashville. They got this money. They got Panda Energy to come in. Dixie Carter, of course, is the money person. And God bless them, they've been trying for years and years and years. And they've always managed to put on decent to good wrestling, but they've always shot themselves in the foot when they were about halfway to being really good with the Vince Russo era, with the booking committee that always got overturned at the last possible second. Now they're taking Impact on the air. I think there's a part of me that's saying, something. The Carter family realizes that this just isn't going to draw the kind of money that they're expecting to. And while the company won't go out of business, I think they are comfortably saying to us that we're not going to keep throwing good money after bad. We're not going to keep throwing
Yeah, and I'll add this. I think in the initial beginning, when Panda Energy came in, I mean, it's pretty much common knowledge in Jerry Jarrett's book. He stated the company was dead. They were done. They aired a Best of the X Division pay-per-view in place of a live pay-per-view from Nashville. The company was dead. Dixie came in because she was a close friend of Jeff Jarrett's. They actually lived in an apartment complex together 10 years before that. So, I talked about this recently on ProSportsFix.com. I think the issue with TNA, they do a lot of stop-starting, and it's almost like WCW set the tone in the year '99 when they came in with Kevin Sullivan and Eric Bischoff, then they went to Russo, then they went back to Kevin Sullivan, they went to Eric Bischoff, then they went to Bischoff and Russo, and they went to Johnny Ace and Terry Taylor. I mean, it was a constant snowball effect again, and that seems to be a theme in the wrestling business. They started out with a great concept. Jeff Jarrett, Scott Hall, Ken Shamrock, three known guys at the top, and a bunch of unknown independent guys from Ring of Honor, again, that company again, and other independents, where you had your AJ Styles, your Elix Skipper, Amazing Red, Christopher Daniels, all these different names, Low-Key, and they sprinkled in some veterans like, Brian Christopher and Jerry Lynn. And now that's morphed, and we're 2013, and some of those names I mentioned, whether it's Chris Sabin, who's now the champion, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, James Storm, who were there in the early days, they're still clawing to be in the main event. Well, now instead of Jeff Jarrett or Ken Shamrock or whoever, now it's Hulk Hogan. He continues to take up all the airtime, and they're using Bully Ray and those guys. Which again, Bully Ray's tremendous, but it almost seems like TNA is still searching for their identity when they had it right in the beginning, which was the X division or the Cruiserweight division. As far as the releases go, some of those releases, I'm not going to sit here and say, boy, they let go of Taylor Hendricks, boy, the company's going to suffer, or, Madison Rain's pregnant and, they let her contract run out and she was okay with that. I can't sit here and say, boy, that's horrible. There were some, Matt Morgan's a name, possibly, if you're a Morgan fan, you thought they could have done more with. I think the biggest name, and as far as all the releases go, sure, there was some good talent. Christian York's obviously, a good hand, but if the company's restructuring and they're trying to cut some costs, that's fine. That happens. Just 5 years ago, every year after WrestleMania, the WWE would cut 5 or 6 wrestlers. The one that got me which was yesterday. And Rudy Boy Gonzalez, who's a personal friend to our website, did a good interview for us, and we keep in touch. He talked about on his Facebook that Jesse Sorensen had no reason to gripe on Twitter that the internet wrestling community was in an uproar because TNA released Jesse Sorensen, who broke his C1 vertebrae and herniated his C5 and C6 disc in his neck, and he was promised. He did that. Wrestling for the company with Zema Ion on pay-per-view. He'd have a job for life. I go back to the Draws incident in the WWF where he has a job for life. They to this day they give him a paycheck. Because that's how that company works. And TNA wants to be WWE. They want to be on their level. You just fired a guy who broke his neck for your company not even a year, prior. And I understand he was working backstage as a production assistant. I understand that the guy was making more money than a production assistant should. That's the only release that I said to myself, that's really dirty.
Say what you will about Vince McMahon. He's been called the devil himself. He's been called Satan incarnate. There's absolutely no way. Dixie Carter wants to be like him because she wants a big piece of the wrestling pie. There is no way that Vince McMahon releases Jesse Sorensen. Absolutely not. Doesn't happen.
All right, yeah, that's a good point to end on. Talking about timing and bosses being wicked and dirty and always complaining or yelling at the town or whatever. I came across an article. It's about 5 years old. I don't know if it still applies or not. This was from a wrestler who had gone back to the independents after being in WWE for a long time. And I'm kind of looking at this. I came across it the other day, in fact, and I thought I'd bring it up here. I'll read a snippet from it about the timing thing. And he says, quote, "I love being in the ring and not having to worry about time cues or if the person after you is going to get mad if you do a certain move. In the WWE, they want the cruiserweights to work the same psychology and the same match pace as the heavyweights. Then they only give you a few minutes for your match. So if you do a high-impact move and don't sell it long enough, the office will get mad at you. I did a tag team match in Italy, and they wanted to go about 12 minutes. It started to go a little longer than that, and I was freaking out. I'm used to getting yelled at if you go 30 seconds or over. Even if you hit your time cue, you get yelled at for something else." And he goes on, "For so many years it was like that. So I was thinking, oh man, this is it. This will be my first and last time here." Then we go to the back, and the promoters, of the independent promoters, of course, actually thanked me for working so hard and entertaining the fans. We didn't plan on going that long, but with the flow of the crowd, so to be appreciated for it was a breath of fresh air. What are your thoughts on that one? I have to wonder.
Is that, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Paul London that did that interview?
No, this is somebody else.
Oh, okay. Again, I think it's a case by case basis. There's certain talents, and I'll use Billy Kidman because I know he's very close to your heart. He's able to
just
work,
one of them anyway.
He's able to work a big man's style in a little man's body. We've seen him have really good matches with wrestlers like Jeff Jarrett and Chris Benoit in WCW. Now, sure, they're not as big as say a Great Khali or a Kane, but they were able to have good matches with Kidman. Jeff Hardy's the idol for any wrestler that's smaller. The matches he had with The Undertaker were revolutionary, and they were able to help stabilize his career. Nowadays, Daniel Bryan and CM Punk could go in there with Brock Lesnar and have a good match. I believe the person had good points and bad points. On one hand, I understand he wants creative liberties. He wants to wrestle an hour, wants to wrestle 30 minutes on the independents. He just wants 20 minutes in the WWE to show what he can do. On the other hand, that's the WWE. That's the big time. This is not Ring of Honor where CM Punk and Samoa Joe can wrestle an hour. They'll maybe get 20 minutes on a WWE pay-per-view, and you got to make the best of it. You have to keep everything in context. Because let's just say it's Brian Kendrick, and he's complaining because him and Shane Helms can only get 10 minutes on a pay-per-view for back in 2004 for the WWE Cruiserweight title, while at the same time Bob Holly and Billy Gunn are going to get 20 minutes. you have to remember, especially in that time period that the interview was done, it was a big man's company, a big man's world. And even today, it's WWE. You're making big dollars. If you want to go wrestle an hour for $50 at a VFW, God bless you. But if you want to wrestle at WrestleMania in front of 50,000 people and you only get 19 minutes or 9 minutes, I think you have to. I think you have to remember who you're actually wrestling for. It's just my take of that. Tony may have a different opinion.
100%. I gotta go one little step further. Remember, by the way, Matt, everything you've said, I completely agree with. One of the things that these guys have to remember is, for the most part, these guys are being filmed for a worldwide television audience, 2 to 3 hour worldwide television audience, which essentially means you're out there every single week. And what are you beholden to? You are beholden to sponsors. You are beholden to advertisers and commercials. Look, you gotta make your 15, 20 minutes available to one John Cena, and you have to give them that. In the case of these, like let's use Kendrick and London, who you're using. You go out on Raw, you're just not going to get the 20 minutes you're going to get on the independent circuit. And like you just said, if you want to go do an hour for Ring of Honor at $50 a whack, God bless you and have fun, and I will be more than happy to chant, "This is awesome," while you do it. But you know what? Vince McMahon could find 2 other cruiserweights, 2 other guys your size to go and do the same thing, and they'll be thrilled to get that WWF paycheck or WWE paycheck.
And I'll go one step further. Nick and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks, were TNA. Now they're in Ring of Honor, Dragon at USA Evolve. If they were to go out on Raw and they were to wrestle Brian Kendrick and Paul London in a 30-minute spot fest, which is their style. They're not. I don't want to insult anybody here, but they're not the well-rounded cruiserweights that WCW had, where you had Eddie Guerrero wrestling Dean Malenko. They're believable. These spot monkeys, I mean, you're going to hit a spiked tombstone pile driver on the floor, and then you're going to, 5 seconds later, you're going to jump up and you're going to do an elbow drop off the top rope. I mean, it's almost, you almost have to remember the believability factor. And I'm sure that, the WWE could give them, an Iron Man classic like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels did. And I'm sure there is going to be a segment of the audience that's going to love that. But if you go back and you watch that match, I'm going to use that match as an example because they were smaller workers, especially in that time period, Bret and Shawn were. They worked a slow, methodical style where as the time ran out, that's when everything picked up. These guys go out there, and I'll just take 2 guys from the WWE roster. You take Justin Gabriel and you take Evan Bourne, and you give them 20 minutes, and you say go out there and have a cruiserweight match. They're going to come to the back, and they're going to get their butts chewed out for hitting all the high spots when Mark Henry's got to go in and have a believable match with John Cena after that. They have to remember there is a believability factor in the WWE, and I love cruiserweights. Don't get me wrong, and Tony made a great point earlier in WCW. Cruiserweights went out there and they had great opening matches, but 2.5 hours later, when it's Hulk Hogan versus the Warrior, for crying out loud, oh God, that was the drawing factor. And like I said, those two went hand in hand. The WWE audience has not been conditioned, in that regard.
Okay. Oh, on a side note here, for those of you in Pittsburgh, Raw is coming back on Monday, October the 7th. You go to WWE.com for ticket information and more of the show. I don't know who's on the card yet, and probably won't know till the last minute.
John Cena.
Oh, that's pretty much a given. Now, who else is going to be there, I don't know. But I did go to the Raw show back in March. That was just lovely. I don't know, and for a show, it was only a few weeks away from WrestleMania. I wasn't really impressed with it. I mean, there was even people leaving at around 10:30, and the show I think was over like 11 or 11:30. I'm not sure which it was, but I was kind of disappointed too. But I didn't want to be rude and leave. But let's see how it goes in October. But on that note, if either of you, I'm sure, attended live shows, and which ones stood out for you, and which ones weren't all that great?
Tony, I'll let you go first because you've got a vast.
Could you elaborate on that? Are you talking about a live television taping, or are you talking about just a live? Oh, okay, great.
Even a house show. Even house shows. I love house shows.
I've always been a guy who loves house shows. Let me go off on a tangent for that. That'll be my answer. I would rather go to a house show any day of the week than a Monday Night Raw taping because a lot of the things that we talked about a few minutes ago don't apply. Going to a house show is like going to maybe a Ring of Honor show where Dolph Ziggler, and for example, about a few months ago, I saw Dolph Ziggler versus Chris Jericho, no DQ match at the Dunkin' Donuts Center Providence, and they gave you 25 minutes of a lot of great action. Not high spot action, but they were able to try out some stuff that was really exciting, and I got really behind it. The best, I'll tell you, I'm about to blow your socks off. One of the greatest house show matches I ever saw was in 1996. Goldust, Intercontinental Champion, wrestling Savio Vega. Those two guys put on this 20 to 25 minute epic. We're talking 2 8/9 counts. Savio Vega and Goldust had that audience eating out of the complete palm of their hands. You honestly, I believed, and for 1 second, I thought, my God, this little dinky arena in Providence, Rhode Island, is about to see an intercontinental title change because this is one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. And the fact that I'm talking about this match 17 years later tells you just how awesome it was. Now, the all-time worst experience I ever had sitting in an arena for wrestling, that's an easy one. Monday Night Raw, shortly after WrestleMania number 17, but it was after WrestleMania 17, but before the invasion started. Do you remember the angle where Steve Austin, it was on SmackDown, Steve Austin beat up JR and put like a 15-minute pounding on him during an angle? Okay, they did it on SmackDown. Okay, you go to SmackDown. That's Thursday night. 3 days later, I'm sitting at the Fleet Center, TD Bank North Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, and the lights are out, and they're showing on the big screen. Okay, we're going to recap what happened on Thursday SmackDown. They showed every second. I mean, I'm talking from Steve Austin going to the ring to confront JR to the music playing when Steve Austin left and the crowd booed him. They literally wasted 15 minutes with the lights out showing this thing. Now, we're talking about the days when Monday Night Raw was only a 2-hour program, okay? So you've essentially just wasted 15% of your night watching something that I watched 3 days ago. I thought it was terrible because the main event that night ended up being a handicap match between like The Undertaker and Kane versus The Big Show. I mean, I don't think Steve Austin even appeared until the dark match, which really just put me in a sour mood. And not coincidentally, I think that may have been the last Monday Night Raw show I ever went to.
It definitely seems like you had a sour experience.
Yeah.
The best for me, and it was the dying days of ECW. They came to Reading, Pennsylvania, which they did a lot. They did a lot of the little towns, York, Allentown, Reading, what have you. It's almost like a fog, because I remember Tommy Dreamer was in the main event, and I know he wrestled Just Incredible, and it was for the ECW title, and I know Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke wrestled, and I believe it was the tag team, Mikey Whipwreck and Yoshiro Tajiri. There was a lot of really good matches, and then at one point, after intermission, the Sandman came out, and he came the crap out of the Blue Meanie. I remember just because at the time, I was in high school, I thought, man, this is really awesome, and then like a couple months later, the company went out of business. That was a live show. The ECW experience was so amazing live.
They always, no matter if they were in front of 100 people in Waltham, Massachusetts, or 1,000 in Revere, Massachusetts, they always gave it the same effort.
I mean, I remember Just Incredible. Francine gave him the Singapore cane, and he just whipped Tommy Dreamer, and he had a mark on his forehead, blood gushing. It was just a great show. I know you've attended a lot more ECW shows than I did. Jeff Hudson, God bless the guy. I think he's at like 50 or 60 ECW shows, just a huge ECW fan back in the day. The worst experience for me, York Fair, just a couple years ago, TNA Wrestling came to the York Fair, and I was very excited. Cheap, it's a fair, just cheap, they're at the grandstand. It was cheap enough where, they're at the Toyota Center that $15, you're there, it's general admission, you're going to see, TNA. It was terrible because I don't know what happened, why, at the time I obviously researched it online to find out what happened. Jeff Hardy was advertised, he didn't show up. Jeff Jarrett was advertised, and it was rare that he didn't show up. I mean, I believe our main event at the time was a great match. It was AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe, but at the time they were both faces on the company. It didn't make any sense why they were wrestling. They had a shortened roster, I believe. At the time, Beer Money, was supposed to take on. I forget the tag team. They were supposed to take on a tag team. That tag team wasn't there, and they ended up facing two local, jabronis from, from the area. It was a sour experience. And then on top of everything, and even though, I obviously got to see the beautiful people live, I did get to see, AJ and Joe, Christopher Daniels wrestle on that show, the Pope wrestled on that show. I mean, it was still cool enough, even though I didn't get to see some of the names I thought I was going to see. Then it rained. So I'm standing there in the rain, and I'm like, I thought I was going to see Jeff Jarrett. I thought I was going to see Abyss. I thought I was going to see, I think at the time Black Rain was there. Dustin Rhodes was supposed to be there. And I'll end on this. The sad part was it rained, so the wrestlers were literally wrestling in the rain because they did it, they you'd have to be at the York Fair, Pennsylvania, but it was tarped, but at the same time they were wet. The knockouts had already wrestled, so I was like, damn, if they went on a little bit later, I could have saw the knockouts, wrestling soaking wet. That'd have been
at least worth it. That'd have been worth it.
So Samoa Joe and AJ Styles ended up wrestling 15 minutes, and it was like they just wanted to go home. So the world champion, which was Jeff Hardy, wasn't on the show. Christian was supposed to wrestle Jeff Hardy. They weren't there, so I don't know what happened, but that was a horrible experience. Mother Nature, and just for whatever reason, I guess they made good use of the card subject to change.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. But let's, since we got maybe about a little under 10 minutes left, let's switch gears for a moment. Many of us know in the city here, Pittsburgh Steelers training camp is opening on this weekend. And on the subject of football, folks, give me your thoughts. Who should we watch this year, and who might have a shot at the Super Bowl?
Did you say 5 teams to watch this year?
What teams to watch this year? Well,
first of all, fly, Eagles, fly on the road to victory. Hit them low, hit them high, 1, 2, 3, fly, Eagles, fly. Obviously, I'd love to say my Eagles are a team to watch at this point. Frank Fisher and I do a podcast on ProSportsFix.com discussing the Eagles in depth. That's a what-if team. They're either going to be bad or they're going to be good. One team that I think, and I'll give you one team to watch and one team that's a little overhyped, and then I'll let Tony weigh in. One team to watch is, and I hate to use them, but is the Detroit Lions. If Matthew Stafford can be healthy, got the contract extension, if he could be healthy with Calvin Johnson there, and I know they're still looking for another wide receiver opposite him. They've recently did some tryouts. They're looking at Steve Preston and some other players. With the acquisition of Reggie Bush to go with Michael LaShore, a healthy offensive line, and as much as it pains me, Jim Washburn coming into running their version of the wide nine. They ran a wide nine last year. Obviously, their head coach ran it in Tennessee with Washburn as the defensive line coach, Jim Schwartz, that is. He's going to come in, and now he's going to get his hands on the Dominican Sue and everybody else on that line. Sue's going to take this is the guy, to describe this to non-football fans, that took Albert Hainsworth and made him a household name for a very short period of time. So him coming there will enhance their wide nine. I think the Detroit Lions are a team, if Stafford's healthy, as much as I like Sean Hill, if Stafford's healthy and they finally get what they think they're going to get from the running back position, because for years, job at best, and then and Michael LaShore, whether LaShore was suspended or hurt or best with the concussions, with Reggie Bush there, with Calvin Johnson, the best receiver in football, with a good draft class that I was impressed with their draft, and the two safety acquisitions that they make, Glover Quinn, for example, coming over to really help that secondary, I think the Detroit Lions could shock everybody and win that division. The one team that I think is a little bit overhyped is the Miami Dolphins. I understand.
Absolutely.
I understand, Mike Wallace was the big-time acquisition. You're going to give Ryan Tannehill the wide receiver he needs. I will say this. Mike Wallace dropped a lot of passes in Pittsburgh. You are a Pittsburgh
you aren't
fan.
Kidding.
He drops a lot of passes. And
Butterfingers.
There's going to be times where Miami Dolphins fans are going to have flashbacks to O.J. McDuffie. And I love McDuffie. My father, huge Penn State Nittany Lion guy. Obviously, I inherited that from him. OJ dropped a lot of passes for the Dolphins, too. He could be the next Irving Fryer for the Miami Dolphins, and that's not the Irving Fryer that was with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is the guy that has the tremendous speed, that has the great route running, but drops a lot of passes. The Miami Dolphins, I know they went out and they added a lot of pieces. Dustin Keller came in at tight end. And they also, went out on the defensive side and added some help. I think they're a little bit – the fact that they're being christened the division favorites over the New England Patriots, and I understand the Patriots lost Wes Welker. I understand that. And I understand that it's easy to look at the Patriots defense and say, man, they got a lot of holes. It's Brady. It's Belichick. Never say never with the New England Patriots. The Miami Dolphins, overrated. Detroit Lions, underrated.
The New England Patriots are going to yawn, stretch, and just kind of stroll to another AFC Eastern Division title. We all know that. They might lose a division game somewhere along the line. Buffalo beat them a couple of years ago. Maybe Miami will get over on one game on them. But this is still the Patriots division. Don't let any hype. Yes, of course. Did we lose Wes Welker? Sure. Did we lose the tight end who shall remain nameless? Absolutely. This is still the team to beat in the division. And I'll tell you another team in the AFC that I'm watching a little more curiously now are the Houston Texans. Go back 1 year. Now, 2012 was supposed to be the year. This was the year that it all came together, and they were this really good. They came out of the gate great. Everything worked out fine. Man, what happened when they got on the national stage against the Patriots? They got punched in the mouth. They got completely punched in the mouth. Came back a month later, came to Foxborough, got punched in the mouth again. So the Texans are actually going into the season with a lot less expectation than there was last year, and I think it's going to weigh a little bit easier on the young minds that team has, as opposed to last year. It was like, wow, it's Super Bowl or bust for Houston. Obviously, Denver's going to be a solid team because I think that entire AFC West is god awful. I mean, the Raiders might win 7 games this year. The Chiefs might actually win 4. The Chargers, I mean, are they still even a team anymore? But it's going to be Denver. It's going to be Denver in that division, of course. Indy's going to be solid again. And as much as I love in the NFC, I try not to make Matt sad by saying the Eagles aren't going to win the division. But I think they have a real shot at that division, especially because they get to play Tony Romo twice, and I find Romo to be the most entertaining quarterback in the NFL simply because of how he finds ways to lose.
With the Philadelphia Eagles, it's going to be one of two things. They're either going to be 1-4 after 5 games, and Michael Vick's either going to be traded or released. Brett Sella could be released. Jason Peters. There's so many Andy Reid guys that are still there that are aging that could be going. Or we could say, holy crap, Nick Foles won the quarterback job. They're 4-2. Foles Mania is running wild. Or, shocker upon shockers, Vick wins the battle. Foles gets an opportunity. They're 1-9. They're 2-8. And they throw the keys to Matt Barkley. They're either going to be good and Chip-O-Mania is going to run wild, or they're going to be really bad and they're going to say, hey, Chip Kelly's first year, he inherited bad roster, et cetera, because Sean Jackson's got
Chip has a mulligan this year. Chip has a mulligan this year easily.
Okay.
It would not shock me if they threw out of the gate and they were good. I want to go back to the Patriots for 2 seconds, and then I'll be done with this. Jake Ballard is the name to watch. He's the guy that I really think is going to take over for the man who shall be named nameless. I think Jake's going to really have a good year. He was injured, with the ACL injury after the Super Bowl. The Giants beat the Patriots 21-17. Went on the injury reserve all last season. I think he is the guy. I really do. His 38 career catches, 4 touchdowns. I think he's the guy that's going to step up and be the number 2 to Gronkowski. I will absolutely 100% disagree with you. The Broncos are not going to walk in and rule that division.
Really?
Okay. I hate to cut into this lightning conversation, but we only have a few seconds left. Would like to thank both of you for coming on the show today, and I'd like to thank everybody who listened. Pending any changes, I'll be back on the air on Wednesday, July 31st. At 2 p.m. Eastern, and hope to see you all then. Have a great weekend, and take care. Again, gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thanks for having us. It was a blast.
Thank you so much. Anytime you want us to come on your show and take up all your airtime, just let us know.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.